Jason Bolt, welcome to Second Nature. I'm so excited because we actually get to just catch up, and you've done so many incredible things in the industry. And but it's been a minute since we've actually talked to each other, and I have so many questions. But I also am just so curious to hear more of the detail because I think we've all from afar been able to watch your progress with Revant and everything else that you've done, especially the brands that you've been advising and investing in. But now we get to go a little bit deeper on all this stuff. So I'm excited for this.
I'm equally, if not more excited too. I've obviously been following your journey, and first meeting you was a huge inspiration for me in the industry, and just even reaching out to you about being on this podcast and wanting to integrate more into the outdoor community is a really big sort of focus for me right now. So excited to get started and see where this goes.
Cool. Well, I mean, I think how you've kind of built yourself up in the industry and even just, kind of building the chops to get to where you are today. One of the first projects that you did, I was actually in your LinkedIn the other day and I saw that you were a bailiff at one point for like a couple of years. And then you went directly, like the next thing listed on there is Society 43, which was a sunglasses company that was kind of built up and then eventually acquired. And if I remember correctly, the insight there, you basically built out sunglasses and then did a licensing deal with all these colleges, and you were kind of like the sunglass of record for Oregon State. And can you tell me a little bit more about how that kind of came to be?
Yeah, I can. I'll step back just to acknowledge the bailiff thing first, because it's a very like circuitous path to where I'm at now, but it actually all makes sense when I kind of look at it, in retrospect here. So in college, I was like doctor or lawyer. That was kind of the thing. My family is full of doctors or lawyers. And so initially I was like, I'm going to go to law school. And I talked to a friend of mine. He's like, hey, there's this one judge at the Superior Court in Seattle that will hire people that haven't gone to law school but want to experience law so they can determine whether or not that's the path they want to take. It's a huge commitment. And I was like, well, what's the job? And he's like, a bailiff in the Superior Court. I was like, okay, sure. Like, Google, what does a bailiff do? Just trying to figure out exactly like, what is this? And then got an intro to the judge. Judge Mary Roberts was extremely formative in who I am today. And obviously ended up getting the job, worked as a bailiff for 3.5 years after undergrad, did civil, criminal, family law, just saw I guess another takeaway for me was like I interacted with people that are at the lowest points in their life, right? Part of the
Yeah.
job was like transporting prisoners from the jail downtown across the Sky Bridge. And this is in Seattle, it's still there. Downtown, there's a sky bridge that goes from the jail over to the Superior Court. And part of my job was to like organize all the trials for this judge and then meet with these people and their attorneys. I was the essentially the go between the judge and everyone else. So I'd be interacting with, people that are at the lowest point in their life, and then like, you know, uh, Bill Gates' father was one of the attorneys that I was involved with. So it's like people at the pinnacle of what it means to exist right now in terms of like material acquisition and success, and then the ones that might be put away for life. And so that was very formative for me. Then I worked on the Obama campaign, and then I got into business. So we can fast forward to business, but just wanted to give you a
Wow.
little background there. Yeah. So '08 was really a big year for me too in terms of transformation. That was the
Yeah.
Obama campaign. I met my wife working on that campaign. So
Wow. Yeah. That's quite the foundation. I feel like stuff like that gives you a lot of empathy for everyone that's out there and also gives you a lot of motivation to really like take advantage of the time that you have and the opportunities that you have. I mean, not the same, but I had a job at McDonald's growing up and I learned so much, probably just as much in that job than any other job I've ever had of just like having an interface with every kind of person you could ever run into. And yeah, it gave me a lot of empathy. It also, I think, gave me a lot of appreciation for all the things that we're able to do these days. And I haven't forgotten a lot of those lessons. So
and that's the key, right? I've always said it's empathy and opportunity. It develops empathy to be in someone's shoes. And if you can do that at the level we did it, both McDonald's and then, for me it was a variety of things, but I would say, interacting with convicted criminals was like people don't often have empathy for that group. And once you get to understand the why and how they got into that situation, it's not that far off, right? They didn't have the opportunities that we had. They didn't have the parenting, the community. So I won't go too far down that road, but when you talk about anything we do in life is an interpersonal relationship. So the better you get at interacting with individuals, you can move in any community. But that process, that sort of understanding and empathy is what allows you to be effective, especially in leadership. So a lot of learning there over the years. But
Very cool.
yeah, yeah. So, well, before we dive in too much too, I just want to wish you a happy birthday. This podcast, I think, we're going on, I think on Saturday, it's a year. So, um,
That's amazing.
and I didn't want to be outdone by Pit Viper. They're great, but I got these. So,
This
happy
is amazing.
birthday, Aaron. Amazing. Congratulations on 1 year of bringing this community together, telling stories, creating opportunity. Truly, truly, you are building something great. I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm not going to sing happy birthday because we have limited time, but happy birthday to you and everyone involved in this podcast.
Honestly, that this is amazing. If you're not watching the YouTube version right now, you are missing out on an epic display. Well, all credit to the whole team here. Dylan has been a huge help in every aspect of it. Ryan Thrower, our producer, and Brett Jorgensen, who edits all these videos. We've got some really amazing people that have jumped in on the ground floor of helping this thing come together, and of course, all the people who have listened and the Slack channel itself. I mean, there are so many cool amazing people who have backed us, and I'm really happy to count you as one of them as well. So
Of course. For
thanks for
life,
that.
man.
That's
And shout out to your team. You guys are crushing it. So a year in, it's still brand new, but you've done so much in that time and had so many great people on the show. So
we have
happy to
been
be one of those that gets to participate and be a part of the journey here for you.
we've kind of been speed running it, that first year in business, or chasing down any idea. I think we tried to stomp our foot on the gas to push past any roadblocks or anything in our way, just to see, like, can we get to episode 100? Most people, I think the stat with podcasts is that people give up after the fourth episode traditionally. And yeah, now it's like we've pushed it out into the world to a point where we can't really stop now. Like, it's just starting to get exciting, and
You're too important, and you're so needed in the way you approach conversation, and even mentioning empathy right now. Right, we've been recently hearing that's a weakness. I would argue otherwise. So you're not just, I think, encouraging to the outdoor community. It's a broader conversation that's needed that you're bringing, and hopefully at a much larger scale. You're only a year in. 2 years from now, let's see where you're at, because
yeah.
I have a sneaking suspicion it's going to be much larger. So
Well, I hope that I'm in person with you for the next cupcake, because
let's do it.
that looks actually really good.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I have to eat this whole thing. So.
That's amazing. Well, one of the things that, I was mentioning how people kind of give up after that first roadblock, and you've successfully launched more than a few businesses at this point, and you've worked with even more. What was it like? And let's just start with Society 43, because that was kind of your first big project.
It was,
What
yeah.
were those original roadblocks like? How did you get from sort of 0 to 1 on this idea of, like, I'm going to be a business owner, I'm going to launch this company, I'm going to make this thing exist one way or another?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's so many facets of like what got me to that point. It's kind of additive. So I'll give you what the biggest sort of drivers were for me leading up to the launch. The first one being Bryce Phillips from Evo. He's been a fantastic mentor, and back in, what was it, 2005, 2004. Evo is a retailer. I'm sure everyone that listens knows, but they started in Seattle. I was going to school up there. He was running tent sales. He would buy like used ski gear at a discount, and then would run these tent sales, and he would hire students like myself to work the tent sale in exchange for gear. And I was like, absolutely, I'm in. And so during that time, just watching how he moved and interacted with people, he's a connector. If you know Bryce, like his number one thing, aside from being a badass skier and great operator, is connector. Like, he knows everyone. He finds like sort of mutual ways for people to like work with each other, like mutually beneficial, right? He's additive. So 1 + 1 = 3 type scenarios. And so just being near that and seeing how he moved, and he had come from the same school and same community I had, I was like, oh, okay, this is how it's done. And this fits with my personality. I'm not an academic. Absolutely not. Don't look up my grade. I don't even can, but like I learn through doing, right? I'm a like I got to be in it. I got to see it. I got to watch the videos. So he's, from what I could tell, very similar. And so I just stayed glued to him for a while. I do the tent sales. I drove around with him in a U-Haul one time to pick up used ski gear. And this is probably a good story for your audience. Bryce might hate me for this, but as we're
Ooh.
driving around, Bryce is rolling in this like 30-foot something U-Haul and smashes into a truck as he's talking to me about like something with skiing and Whistler. And I'm like, you're just glued to him. I'm like, oh no, like just huge dent in the side of this. I think it was a Dodge Ram. And this guy comes running out of the house. And I'm like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Like, I'm pretty big and like, I'm like, am I gonna have to? What's gonna happen here? Bryce jumps out. He's like, I'm so sorry, man. Here's what we're doing. Here's the deal. I'm from Evo. The guy's like, I love Evo. Bryce rolls up the back of the truck. He's like, take whatever you want, dude. Like, I am so sorry. Like, and this guy goes in there and picks out like two or three pairs of skis. They shake. They're like, dabbing it up back then. And he just he's like, no harm, no foul. Like, keep doing what you're doing. Love what you're doing for the community. And walks away with like a few $1,000s in used gear and like did not get insurance information, nothing. So again, I'm like, okay, seeing how he operates within the community and how he's like diffusing situations. And so for me, like I absorbed all of that. And then when it came my turn, I was like, I was still following a path of like law down in Eugene, and I came up with this idea of like Eugene is crazy for the Ducks. You probably know this.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I adopted it, right? I was a UW guy. I went down to Eugene. I got disowned by a few people, but I went to the games at Autzen, and I was like, this is crazy. You'd be out at like the nicest restaurant, and people are in all Ducks gear.
Oh yeah.
And so I was like, but no one was wearing sunglasses. It was just like hats, shirts, all that. And I was like, why isn't everyone's wearing these like knockoff Wayfair, like $20 gas station sunglasses. I wonder if I could source those in like school colors and just sell them like at a tailgate. Like I was in like $40,000 in student debt at the time. So I was like, I got to make some money. And it was just an idea. And then I went to Alibaba and I typed in like sunglasses, searching, and it's like a sourcing website. And I
Mhm.
found like 30 factories that make sunglasses. Went back and forth. I was like, I need them in these colors with this mirror coating and these logos. Well, actually, at the time I didn't have the logos. And within like 2 months, I had, I think, 300 pairs of green and yellow sunglasses, like green frames with mirrored, yellow mirror.
Yeah.
And then I rented a parking space at Calhoun's, which is a restaurant. I don't know if it's still there, but it was on the way to Autzen. And I just set up a table and put out the sunglasses, and I would sell like $1,000 to $2,000 worth of sunglasses per game.
Whoa.
So the demand was instantaneous. People got it. Your open air stadium, they actually were legitimately like they offered UV protection and they had some nice features. I have my UW ones here. I should probably have the Oregon ones, but see they like it's like you get the logos, you get the like school pride. They have these like little flex fit features. So they were like $25, right in that sweet spot for students.
Yep.
Yeah, and then got licensing for 80 universities, the NBA, and the MLS. So it was a wild time to manage Pantones. That
Yeah.
was the crazy thing. It's all the colors. So
Wait, I feel like
go ahead.
we skipped a step here. You were at a card table selling a couple hundred glasses, and then you had to deal with the
I know.
NBA.
I'm trying to be respectful of the time because I can talk. So feel free to cut me off. I could talk for hours about all this,
I,
but
I mean, it
yeah,
does seem like you had a confirmation that like, oh, this will definitely work. It works here in Eugene. It probably works the same way at every university where they're looking for sunglasses that are in the colors that they want to wear. And if I can catch them on the way to the game or on campus somewhere, there's a pretty solid chance.
you're bottom of the funnel when you're right in front of the game, right? Not digitally, but in person. You're like highly qualified customers. So without knowing what that meant back at the time, that's what I was doing. But yeah, I can walk you through from the table to like
Yeah,
selling
the
essentially.
licensing thing is really interesting because I think a lot of people are capable of making the core concept, but like what does a licensing, how do you even approach that? And did you ever have like a why should we, how come no one else is doing this, type moment?
Yeah, and it's it's always a journey. It's like one of the things that I will now say to early stage entrepreneurs is like those roadblocks. The successes and roadblocks come way more often early on, right? They're bigger at scale. As you grow, they become more intense and take more time to solve. But like now back to the table. I'm at the table selling, and we did it for like 4 games. It was my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. Shout out to her for just grinding with me at Calhoun's. Uh, and I get called in. I got an email from the athletic department and the licensing department at University of Oregon. And it was like, we need you to come in, essentially like paraphrasing here, but like we have some issues. And I was like, oh no, okay, let's see what this is all about. Um, that was a day before I was meeting with the Duck Store, which is the largest, at the time, the largest retailer, or one of them, I think top 10 of licensed gear in the
Hmm.
entire country because the Ducks were on fire. It was 2000, let's see, 2010 then. So they were like going to the Rose Bowl. Uh, and so I get called in. Let's see, no, I go to the Duck Store first. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I looked up like how to pitch to retail. Right? And I got this plan and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna literally templatize this and do what it says to do. So I go in, I meet with the Duck Store buyers, and shout out to them. They are the friendliest people. Their mentality is getting like students, like young entrepreneurs, like helping facilitate growth,
That's so cool.
right? And so it could be there's a lot of buyers that aren't like that. uh, so I go in and I have like a briefcase full of green and yellow, green sunglasses, and I'm like, hey, these will do well because I've sold so many at Calhoun's. Like the feedback's phenomenal. Most people buy 3 to 4 pairs over the course of 2 months, not knowing what really repeat purchase rate is or lifetime value. I didn't know any of that. And I'm just gonna say like people wear them and they love them. And I brought a bunch of pictures from the games of the student section wearing them. And I was like, hey, I know for you guys, like you're taking a risk here, so I'm going to give away a bunch to the student section, the athletic department, so they're all going to wear them, and that's advertising to your most qualified customer, right? And we'll work out a deal there, but just trust me with an order here. I have displays. I knew that was a thing. You have to be able to merchandise these things, so I bought some displays off some random website, and they're like, okay, we'll go. Let's do Keystone model, and I'm like, okay. They're like, we'll take 200 and I think it was 244 pairs. They order in multiples of 244. And I was like, oh my God, that's so much money. But what is Keystone, and so come to find out, we'll buy it at 50 point, like essentially like this is retail. We buy it at half off. And that's now the best you're going to get retail. It's like, okay, no financial modeling, just like I know what I'm buying these for. I know that I'm going to sell them. They're going to sell them for 20 to 25, so I'm making profit. And that was really the beginning, and that was unlicensed. So I made that sale, and then 5 days later, I went into the athletic department, and it was intense, dude. I was like, I came in and I was like, hey, nice to meet you. Like some names you've heard of, like big names, and at Nike and others, and they're like, man, you are ripping us off essentially. Like and they had photos of me, like drive by, like they had taken pictures of me at Kowloon selling sunglasses in green and yellow.
Wow.
And they're like, this is what is it? It's like trademark confusion by association, and colors matter, especially in athletics. Like Pantones are super not guarded, but like you got to make sure they're exact. And my Pantones were just like rough estimates. So they're like, not only are you selling an unlicensed product, you're associating yourself with U of O, and it isn't matching our Pantones. This is highly damaging. And I was like, well, how about you give me licensing and then I can sell it in the right Pantone and you guys can all make money. Here's how much money I've made. And they're like, deal.
No way.
Yeah, dude. And there's these moments throughout life where transparency actually is the most powerful tool you have. And that was it. I was like, I'm not going to like try and fight this. Like, yeah, I'm associating with U of O. Yeah, it's clear. Like there's no space for me. I can't create breathing room here. I tell young entrepreneurs this too, like play dumb. Like it's an advantage to be like, I'm just trying to build a business. Like, aren't we here to learn and grow? And like, this is a proof of all these things that like school and academics are supposed to be about. Like, it should be a place for you to experiment. So that was my approach going in. I was like, I'm just learning as I go. And I'm sorry I did this. It was like not intentional at all. I just thought it was a cool thing for fans, and it like, provided protection and cool for the school because they're representing you even out, when they go out, they got green and yellow on now. That's
Yeah.
branding. So we arrived at a deal, and I got licensing. That was my first licensing deal. They handle licensing in-house, which is very different, or they did at the time, from a lot of the schools in the different conferences. So, I kind of learned as I went, but that was the first big deal. And we sold to 25% of the student population that first year I got licensing. It was insane. You look at pictures from back then, and the stadium is just, it was called Shady Peeps at the time. Shady Peeps sunglasses everywhere. It was wild. So, I mean, that was my first, like, got hooked, saw the power of like working with people and finding common ground and then bringing up good product to market. Like, it's not just a throwaway. Like, these are now 9 years old, and I like, they're just as good as they were when I first made them. So,
Yeah.
it was very formative for me, gave me confidence too. Because it's like, okay, I can be in the room with these very serious adults that have like photographic evidence of me violating trademarks and come out of it with a win, like a big win.
Yeah.
So that just lit the fire under me. I'm like, I can do anything. Like, that's really where my confidence came from in business, were those interactions early on.
Isn't it amazing that instead of fighting, you actually accepted and tried to, be on the same side of the table as those guys? And by doing that, it opened up what eventually, got you to a very successful business that eventually got acquired because instead of going head to head combat, you actually tried to find the common ground. That's such a,
Absolutely. And Aaron, this is it, right? So I don't know who this is attributed to. You can go deep into the internet and try and find the source, but like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's like my mantra, and has been since that time. Like, I was a lone wolf of like, go, go, go. I took 25 one-way flights around the country after that to go get licensing and deals with the bookstores. I was just like, I'm all in. I'm going to do this on my own. And I've kind of had, and this is a journey for me, I've had the same mentality in the outdoor industry. It's been like, I want to come, I want to be the outsider. I'm going to invest in these brands. I participate big time, but I've never been fully integrated
Mhm.
into like the core. That's part of why I want to do this, is like, there's so much value in there, and I want to go far with what we're building here at Revant. We've gone fast and we've achieved a lot, but now it's actually about the group effort. So,
Yeah.
anyway, back then it was like 1-to-1, and Arlen, who's at the bookstore there, who was running it as the GM at the time, that guy like changed my life. So, the judge, Mary Roberts, Arlen at the bookstore, Brian at the bookstore, all these people are like, they're your sort of elders and guides along the way. I put it that way. They invest in young minds that are ambitious, and they give you opportunity. And so that's what I'm trying to do now in my own life with these other investments.
That's incredible. And I want to get into this investor stuff too, but I think maybe we should wrap up the Society 43 in, that story ends with you essentially getting that brand getting acquired by an outside firm. How did you get to that point? Was that sort of the next obvious step for you, that like, okay, I did all the licensing deals and I see the value of that licensing deal more than just the printing of the glasses? Like, how did you arrive at that point where it was time to move on?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very difficult decision. I'll say there again a number of elements that went into that decision. As we grew, we got 80 licenses in the NCAA, which was an insane amount of work personally, because every licensing deal is different in the way it's structured and managed, and it's decentralized in many ways. There's like the CLC and others that have tried to centralize all licensing, which at the pro level, it's centralized usually with the league. But it's a defensible position too, you think, right? You get in, you do all this, you build a whole new category of product, And as we started to get momentum, as we were in like the Inc. 500 fastest growing companies, all of a sudden these brands that in the licensing world, especially NCAA, make the cups and all the tchotchke crap that you see, and it's like hyper wasteful in my opinion. They started making sunglasses and undercutting me by like 50%, right? And you're like, hey, bookstores, retailers, licenses, like help, and that wasn't coming. That wasn't, and in fact, it was actually like the fees would increase, and then the marketing fees. So you start when you get down into the financial, like the unit economics of that business model, quickly became like, okay, we have a ceiling here because we're being compared to like hats and T-shirts. You know, when students go to the bookstore, their parents do. You're being compared against this sort of these categories and this price point of product. Now, in order for me to pay all the licensing royalties as well as the marketing for all the retailers and all these different cuts that were happening, the margin was just getting thinner and thinner. So there's the economic pressure and then the lack of defense from the licensors, where you're like, well, if you're going to create my competition and allow for it with a nearly identical product, like this isn't a game I want to play.
Right.
Right. So that's why we went into the NBA and MLS, a little more defensible, a little more scalable, can charge a little bit more. Um, at the same time, I had been sued by Oakley.
For what you were doing in the bookstores.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll give you, there's another piece to this. I actually started Revant first. So
Okay.
Revant was like eBay importing lenses. We'll get into that later. But Society 43 Shady Peeps, I had to rebrand because of another trademark issue. Uh, that was 6 months later. And it was born out of this like, oh, I can source all these mirrored lenses. The factories I'm working with also make frames. And so I was able to use those relationships to then. So anyway, I'd been selling Oregon for the longest. I got rights to use the O on the sunglasses, some somewhere, but about when was it? Forgetting the exact year. Someone can find it because it's all online. I was working in my office in the Ford building in Southeast Portland. We had like 10 employees at the time working on both brands, Revant and Shady Peeps, Society 43. I'll call it Society 43 from here on out. We're all clacking away, open office, whatever. This guy comes in and he's like someone I'd never seen before. He walks over to my head of customer service, Rachel, and he goes, "You've been served." And I can hear it. Everyone can. It echoes in there. And I'm like, oh no. Oh no. Why? Why? We're just getting momentum. And I was pretty certain, I worked in the legal world. So I was like, I really, really did a lot of work to make sure we weren't violating any patents or trademarks with replacement lenses. And I thought, oh, they found something and they're highly litigious at the time. Uh, we're going to get, it's going to be like catastrophic for us. So I get the deck or the stack of papers, and it's like 4 or 5 claims, and it says Oakley v. Society 43. I was like, what? This is what? I didn't see this coming. They were suing us for using the Oregon O on sunglasses. They said it was confusingly similar, like, and that we intentionally did it. So it was like triple damages, I believe, right? It was like in the millions of dollars, and again like existential. And I was like, this is from Noby Martins, which is like one of the most powerful law firms in the country. And now I know more about them. I can share that later if you want. I don't know how deep we want to go, but anyway, that really hit hard because I then had to spend. I went in. I just switched insurers. I went from like my State Farm home insurance with a business policy to like official business insurance, like a few months before. And I told them, I'm like, hey, this lawsuit came through, and they're like, a week later, oh, we don't have a duty to defend. And I was like, what? And they go look at page 87, line blah blah blah. In the instances of like IP violations, it's on you. Defense, damages. I'm having like a quasi heart attack. And there's other moments in the history of my businesses where these things come up and you're like, oh, it's over. Like that was a great run. I hope I'm not bankrupt for life. This was one of them. And so I'm like kind of swirling at the time. I'm like, when do I tell my team? Like, it was our biggest account by far. We had 10,000 pairs of Oregon sunglasses in inventory, which for us was massive. and that we expected to sell all of that as like 40% of our revenue for the season, because it's all seasonal based on football.
Right.
So I'm trying to like maintain composure here. I'm reaching out to all these attorneys I know from my time, and they're like, "Oh, this is a tough situation." One of them says, "Hey, have you tendered it to, I think it was State Farm or Farmers, the one you had insurance for when you first started selling at Oregon?" I was like, "Oh, no, I didn't." So I did that night, and I was like, "Please, please," I'm reading through the policy, like looking for like duty to defend. I couldn't see anything. Within like 24 hours, my agent got back to me. He's like, "Not only do we have a duty to defend, it is 100% of damages and legal and any travel, anything related to this case, we got you. And we have an attorney that has dealt with Oakley before."
Wow.
Dude, wild, wild time. So, anyway, that, as businesses grow and become more complex, running two of them at the same time became very challenging for me. So it's both an economic equation and then where's my time best spent right now?
Mhm.
And Revant really became to me like core to what I want to build in this world, and the opportunity it had and the momentum it had were like, we were skyrocketing with Revant, and it
Yeah.
was like not even close, giving it like 20% of our time. 80% went to this licensing, and all the complexities of that. So I was like, let's buy some breathing room, like,
Mm.
and in my sort of naive way, I was like, well, once I sell Society 43, I'm gonna have so much more time. Of course, that's a vacuum that gets filled immediately.
I had a
So,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I had a similar thought this year where, or in the past year, if I quit my job, I'm gonna have so much time to make content, and it's amazing how the vacuum just goes, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, what was I doing all day?
Yeah, it's how we're wired, right? There's like you think of it as like, oh, it's happening to me. You're actually doing it.
Yeah,
It's the way we're wired,
yeah.
which is fine, but understanding like the difference is really important for like, anyway, health reasons and focus and all that. So settled that lawsuit. It was crazy. I had to go down into mediation with 5 attorneys from Novi Martins. Expensive room. We were there all day. I had my Oregon gear on because I was very emboldened at the time, and we spent, I think, until like the judge was like, and this, I think it's been long enough, this won't matter, but he's like, "Hey, I know these guys, the lead attorney, his son has a softball game at 3. If you just wait it out, they're going to want to settle." And we would pass pieces of paper between our rooms in the skyscraper down in, where was it, Sacramento, I think. And it was like, this is the settlement amount. No, this is the counter. This is the mediator would come back and forth, and then sure enough, by 3, they like came our way quite a bit, and they agreed to buy all of our organ inventory at retail.
Wow.
So that was part of the deal. I was like, hey, I don't have to settle. I have unlimited coverage here. So I'm feeling a little,
Yeah,
competitive.
yeah.
And I was like, this inventory is dead to me, and it's only dead because we're doing this settlement. So it stands to reason that you guys would be willing to take the inventory and sort of make us whole here, and then we'll stop using the O. So we landed there, and we ended up making, I think it was $150,000 off the settlement.
Wow.
And
Wow.
then 3 weeks later, I got a call from their inventory manager at their warehouse. He's like, "What am I supposed to do with this shit?" I don't know if I can swear, but like, it was. I was like, "I don't know. It's yours. You own it." And then we stopped selling with the O. So those things all led to me like, "Hey, I need to focus. I need to give Revant some the attention it deserves,
Mhm.
and see how far I can take this thing." So sold to a group of investors up in Seattle that had like retail ownership and other, it was a private sale. But yeah, that was a journey, and that was in 2015 when I sold that.
Wow. What a chapter of just,
I covered all of it, dude. Yeah, it's
yeah.
wild. Yeah.
That's some serious like business lessons. I mean, we always say on the pod, like business is hard, but when you got into it, selling glasses at a card table out in front of a restaurant, probably being in a skyscraper fighting Oakley was not on your agenda. I don't know.
No, but the settlement is framed on my wall. So Colin Baden signed it. He took over as CEO back when Oakley sold to Luxottica for a few $1 billion. So
Amazing.
anyway, That's these moments where you look at it as like at the time catastrophic, then always in retrospect, the ultimate education.
Yeah.
Like you cannot pay for that sort of like assault on, you might be able to, but like it's very rare to get sued by a $1 billion company at our size.
Yeah.
And and they wanted to wipe us out. Like that was clear to me. So anyway, fuel to the fire, right?
Yeah. Well, so Revant, the way that I understood it in its original era, you were basically you had replacement lenses for all of the main glasses companies where if your Oakley's got scratched, you would be able to just buy replacement lenses, and that was the bulk of the business originally. Is that pretty
It
fair?
still is. Yep. 95% of our business are replacement sunglass lenses. So very niche. And I guess inspiration for me was I love mountain biking. That's my sport. I was doing it a lot, and I loved Oakley. Like that was my brand. It's like these guys, this group has it going on, and all the athletes that I love were signing with Oakley, but they're super expensive, right? So
Yeah.
like $40,000 in debt, I got my $200 Oakleys, and then the lens would get scratched. And I'm like, why can't I just get a replacement lens? Because they pop out so easily, right? You have like, I don't know, it's really quick, but like it's the aha moment was like every frame for the most part, you just reverse engineer how it's assembled, and you can easily pop lenses in and out, and it makes like a pop. A lot of people are like, oh no, I broke it. It's totally fine. Like, and most lenses are made from two different curvatures of what we call lens blank. So every single lens is cut out using a CNC router out of a lens blank.
Mhm.
So out of two different curvatures, we can make lenses for almost every single sport frame in existence.
Wow.
And so for me, that was like, okay, we'll start here importing product for specific Oakleys. That's where I started for the Juliet and the flak jacket frames. And then customers, I sold them on eBay, and customers would be like, "Oh, I also have this frame and this frame. Can you make lenses for it?" Send that over to my factory. I'd buy the frames, send them over. They'd create their own file, cut them, send them in, and then I just distribute from my apartment. Um, so we can stay there for a little while, or jump into what was built and where we're at. Let me know what you
Yeah,
want to cover.
let's go into, well, actually, before we go all the way there, that moment where you sold your company and you were able to focus in 100% on Revant, like you've obviously done a lot of other things since, you've invested in some other companies and stuff. Was there was it just pure relief, or were you just like, with this money I can now do this, like, or just like I'm just gonna wipe out everything and just start from scratch? Like,
Very good
what was
question.
that moment like?
You're good at this. I already knew you were. You know, it's hard to really describe. I answer every question with like there's a multitude of emotions that come up as you're selling your company.
Mhm.
It was for at the time I was so underwater. I was like stressed to the max, and I was like, this is not how I should be living my life because I got I'm running two fast growing companies, and I'm trying to like even though they're in the similar industry, it's a very different customer group and concept and brand identity. And so to bifurcate my team, my time, my brain on those two things was like very, very taxing. Also, I just loved it though. Like the relationships I got to form. I wasn't a big collegiate sports fan before I started the company. I like would go to Husky games when I'd get invited. That was the extent of my like collegiate fandom. So I got immersed in this culture and began to love it. I was like, "Oh, tailgates are different when you're like in the industry, They're the people are like they're all about community and celebration and the striving for better and like in sort of the highest sense, at least before you're paid. Now that's different, right? Yeah, NIL, but it's a true passion sport when you're playing on a or not a pro team, but a highest level like a University of Texas football team. You are the pinnacle of the sport before you get paid. So to be around those people and that culture, I had an emotional bond to it. At the end of the day, though, like it for me, I stepped back and I was like, to sell this at this moment makes sense because I'm going to get the best economic return,
Mhm.
right? I'm going to get to focus on Revant, which is growing and needs my attention. And my team is raising their hand like, we can't do all this. And then that combined with the lawsuit and the diminishing margins, I let it go. I was like, I got to let this go completely because it's out of my hands. For a while, I was checking in on them, and then I was like, nope, you got a clean break, clean
Yeah.
break. It's like those relationships where you keep looking back, you might go back. And for me, it was I needed to be all in on this next venture. So a little bit of longing, as you can tell. I still keep them around. They're still very much a part of my life and my journey. I give them out to friends. We have a bunch of them here that I kept.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be part of your identity though too, of like, hey, I'm a founder with a successful exit. Even as you think about, the next round of things that you do, that's a big part of the conversation too of I've accomplished something that's meaningful, and there's a record and I can do it again, like it may fill you with additional confidence, or open up opportunities to mentor people that are looking to follow in those footsteps where an exit is high on their priority list, or at least on the list.
Yeah,
Um,
that's absolutely true. When we talk about, well, there's a few times where this has happened, but because I've had that experience, to your point, a lot of founders now come to me for like the advice that they can't get anywhere else because you can't talk about selling your company in the community,
right.
and you can't talk about why, right? Because oftentimes the drivers are highly personal, and as founders, as CEOs, you're not really encouraged to get too personal. That's changed a little bit, but you kind of keep up this like eternal optimism. The plan is the plan. Go, 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 grow, grow, grow. And anything that counters that is viewed as like weakness. And
Mm,
so we have a nice, I would say, network of founders now where we actually talk about the deeper stuff and the why and the like drivers behind opening a new product category versus selling. Oftentimes it's these like decision points where it's like this is continually investing in this direction that I'm already on. This is potentially a new path that opens up new opportunity. It's unknown, so it's a little scary. But that's where, if you're a guide that's been there before, you can kind of lessen the fear and say, here's the reality, good and bad. Here's
mhm.
what to prepare for. Here's the team you need that's different from the team you're with to go down this path. And all of those things I just really enjoy. Like I love giving people that insight and that background. So
Is it sort of different for every single founder that you meet, or do you find yourself kind of giving out a lot of the same advice when it comes to people? Are people kind of stuck on the same thing?
there's common threads. So, you can kind of you're an entrepreneur. So you're just built different, and it's hard to say like without coming across as like, oh yeah, of course you are. But really, it's not necessarily a positive thing. There's a lot of wrapping up your identity and self-worth in what we build. Like
Mhm.
that's how we manifest it and bring it to life is like it has to be an extension of who we are to be successful long term. So to then say, well, it's not going well, or I want to sell this thing to a new, my people use the child analogy. I hate that, but like emotionally, I could see how they get there. That's going to be the hands of someone else. I have no control. Well, do you want that control in this next phase? Because to your point earlier about like you're in grow, grow, grow mode. There's a great article called The Five Stages of Business. It's a Harvard Business Review article written in, I think, the 70s, where they talked to, I think, 200, 300 companies about these stages. And they were able to identify very specifically and very accurately what's required at each stage from the founder. And the first stage is growth at all costs. So when you're talking earlier, I'm like, yep, he's in that stage. It's grow, 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 right? We'll take anyone, anything. Let's go. We got to prove the model.
Yeah.
And then there's other stages, and I'm at like the one stage here, which we'll talk about later. But that helped me again kind of frame up, for founders, hey, here's where you're at. Here's an actual model with like scientific backing on if you want to become a politician. That's a very common route for founders that get money and exit.
Hmm.
That's actually on that five stages of growth. Or if you want to double down, you have to change how you operate. So you're now not about the grow, grow, grow. You're about systemizing and delegating. And that's a whole different mindset and a different practice. So you need to be dedicated to the craft. And if you're not there, totally fine. You can go skiing every other day, take the money, go find something new, reset, right?
Mhm.
So those are the types of things. Typically, it's an emotional response, right? The presenting case in psychology or therapy is like, this is so crazy. Like, I don't know what AI is going to do to my industry. I don't know. I'm having a lot of these conversations right now, and the
Hmm.
common thread is like unknown. Like, how are we going to tackle the unknown?
Yeah.
And so, and then there's all the nuances of like, I started this with my wife and we're not doing well. Or my supplier decided to pivot into a completely different industry. And those things are sort of case by case pieces of advice depending on, what they are. But this is what I enjoy. This is what I'm going to do with my future, by the way. It's
This is so
like
cool. Yeah.
long term, like I love this stuff. So getting more ingrained in that world and helping earlier stage creatives, entrepreneurs.
I am absolutely frothing to read this article. I'm going to put it in the show notes for sure. And yeah,
It's wild,
I'm
man.
definitely feeling that phase of like I will this into existence.
And it's necessary, and it is the phase. That's the thing that this article will do, is like all the things you kind of assume or things that come naturally because you're whatever, you've been around it enough to see it.
Mhm.
It says absolutely this is where you should be and how you should be operating. And at the next stage, be ready for this at this next phase, because it means you have to personally change your mindset, or else your team's going to just be in chaos. If you're a doer at the next phase, if you're still in the work, they're going to be like, get off my back, tell me where we're headed, and let me do my thing.
Wow. This feels like a step deeper. I was listening to a podcast the other day and they referenced this website called 16 Personalities where it's like a Myers-Briggs test or whatever. And I just was bored so I took the test and I got my stuff out and I just felt I'm a INTJ. I'm the
Me
architect.
too.
Oh yeah. Sweet.
Yeah.
Uh
Yeah.
and I felt so seen, like, whoa, that's crazy. I feel like so many of these things just lining up, and I feel like this article is gonna do the same thing where it's just gonna be like, that's me. Oh, there I am, and it feels so like special snowflake, but then you see it like distilled down into these 5 categories or these 16 categories or whatever. Uh and it's kind of crazy that we all kind of end up in the same bucket, right?
Yeah, yeah. I would counter that a little bit. You are a special snowflake. And what I mean by that is these tools, these understandings of like, we're allowing your snowflake to come to life in a more controlled framework,
Yeah.
because you talk to product teams, right? You're like, hey, the creative energy is the magic. Like, you connecting dots in the way you do, that's the snowflake.
Mm.
The processes and how we get product to be as successful in market as possible is the fuel to keep your snowflake floating, or something like that, right?
Yeah, I like that.
So you got to use our processes, you got to use these budgets, all these things that feel counter to who you are. They're important only because they will allow you to do more of what you love, the snowflake stuff.
Yeah.
So learn it, it'll become second nature, and all of a sudden you will be able to, elevate your craft. And that is the next step for a lot of creatives, is actually doing the hard work to understand process and getting into the thing that they least like. Like, I hate spreadsheets. Early on, I had this guy tell me, dude, if you don't know your numbers and you can't build your financial statements and know them inside and out when I ask you, you should not be running a business. And this was like a very successful individual that was like, I was meeting with for mentorship. I was like, and he started peppering me with questions about my financials. And I was like, I don't know any of this. And then I was shamed into spreadsheets. I'll say that. Like, but now I know our financial statements and how to build like financial models almost inside and out. And that to me was like a hard, important life lesson. So
Yeah.
be your snowflake. There's something there, but make sure you give yourself the tools to be as successful as possible.
We talked to Martina Brimmer from Swift Industries not too long ago, and she was saying exactly the same thing of you can tell the story of the business of any business through their numbers and using that as a decision making framework for what the actual truth is. And in her case, she had multiple people look at her business and say, looking at the numbers here, this is a 2-person business. How many people do you have? Oh, yep. And then that was the signal for her that, oh, wait, this is incongruent. I need to make it congruent based on what I keep seeing and everyone else can see in these numbers. My thoughts and feelings don't have any control over these numbers. And if these numbers are all telling one story and I'm trying to do something different, then something has to change. And yeah, it was a
Yeah,
huge,
that's very good advice because oftentimes founders are in their emotions
yeah,
or leaders are in their emotions, and the emotions are not trustworthy, you know. Beliefs drives thoughts, drive feelings, drive action. So if you believe you're killing it and all of a sudden you're not looking at your numbers or watching your inventory specifically over the last 4 or 5 years, you get what we have now in the industry.
yeah,
And it's, there's no blame, but it's like the better you get at reading numbers, the earlier you can course correct when things do whipsaw or whiplash, I guess is the term in inventory. So
yeah,
yeah, it's very smart. It's another language, but like if you're going to be in business, that language is critical. Just like all the marketing language I had to learn, you know? So,
I feel like one of the biggest things, especially when our emotions and our ego are tied to the business itself, it's so simple to get wrapped up in and get impressed by what you do. As a creator, for example, having a YouTube channel over 100,000 subscribers is something that people aspire to, and that's such a cool thing. And you can get busy patting yourself on the back for that, but then yeah, you look at the real numbers, like, well, what does YouTube revenue look like? Is that enough to live off of? And you have to sort of like reorient yourself and remove your ego from the equation and look at the numbers. Like, what is the actual business that I'm building? Because I've demonstrated something to a successful level, but does that actually keep a business going? And what would need to be true for this to all work? What does the flywheel look like? What does the business look like? How do these pieces actually fit together in a meaningful way? Um,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And we call it, I think the term vanity metrics is very real.
yeah,
We talk about that a lot, not just in marketing, but across the business. What makes you feel good versus what is driving the health of your organization? And do you define health differently across the company? If you do, as the leader, you have to clearly define health.
yeah,
Because it used to be grow, 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 top line, top line, top line across even the largest businesses, right? And then all of a sudden it been like, oh, we have to make money. Okay, now it's EBITDA and profit and the exact opposite of grow, grow, grow. And we had that happen in the last 3 years, right? From an investor standpoint, you're not looking at like growth, like top line solely, which was where things were at.
yeah,
There's many more metrics now that matter more. So even that concept is hard for leaders to grasp, that you set the tone on what health is, and then health, you got to have people to diagnose the health. So if they don't speak that language, you need to hire or train. It depends on how urgent it is.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so Revit's been around now for 14 years, right?
15, bro.
15 then? 15 years.
15. Yeah,
Incredible.
January of this year. It's crazy. And I'll break it here because I haven't said, we sold. So I sold the company.
Oh,
Uh,
dude. Okay.
I kept it silent. I like to move pretty silently for a number of reasons. But yeah, we sold, back in July of 2023. So yeah, it's been a few years.
Whoa.
I just want to shock you. It's your first birthday, so uh,
Wow.
yeah, there you go. And I can give you more context there for why, because I think it actually matters to what we're building. I know it does, because back to like, what are the drivers?
Yeah.
I have some very clear and specific drivers that led me to that conclusion. So.
Tell me everything.
Well, let's see. So back then I'd been running the company for 13 years. And I guess before I jump into all of this, is there any context you want me to provide in terms of like who we are, what we do? I think we covered most of that, but
We kind of
kind of
went, we
jump around.
started off with
Okay.
like, right? Like
Lenses.
you've made
Yep.
all the lenses and
Yep.
yeah, and you can put them
Okay.
in every glass. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Direct to consumer, all online. So I was DTC before DTC was cool. I'll put it
And
that way. I
and
sound
and you
old.
have like the actual stuff to make the lenses in your
Yeah,
office,
I
right?
should
Like I
walk you. I should walk you downstairs. We have a
yeah.
massive factory
Yeah.
downstairs right now, making thousands of lenses,
Right
pairs
in
of lenses,
Portland. I remember
right in the Pearl District.
when you
Yeah,
just got that spot, I remember walking through and seeing some of the newer machines that were CNCing
yeah,
stuff out and whatever.
yeah, yeah. We got a much better HQ now. So we took Snow Peak's old space last. What would have been, I guess it was September of 2023. We built this space out. Snow Peak moved up on to 23rd. Fantastic brand. So we're like honored to be in this space. Uh, but it's amazing, dude. It's like I love like rehabbing. This came from Bryce too. Like I'm all about community, and I think like buildings matter, and rehabbing, modernizing, but preserving the identity and the spirit of a building
Yeah.
is like one of my loves. So we're here, and it's like the perfect mix of like industrial and state of the art technology. We have like the best lens edging testing equipment in the world downstairs, and our system, we just won manufacturer of the year twice, like two times over the last 4 years for what
That's
we do here. So next time you come, maybe we'll do a walking tour here, and I can tell you what's going down
yeah.
and what we're building. But from that, from born out of that capability, right? It was like, hey, we can manufacture, and that was a whole to manufacture at the tolerances we do across. We now have 125,000 individual products that we make on demand here.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. It's bonkers, and we do it profitably. And if you order typically before 11 a.m., your lenses will ship out within 24 hours, made here. And you'll get a video showing you how to pop out your old lenses, put your new ones in. You get walked along this journey for a product with an AOV of about $57.
Wow.
So, which is half of what now the brands are starting to offer replacement lenses themselves. But like again, you're around 110 to 120 bucks for a set from the Big O or some of these other ones. So our lenses start at 24 bucks, and we have testing here on site, an optics bench designed by an engineer that's worked in the industry for 25 years. We're one of 3 brands that have what we have in terms of testing, and our lenses reflect that. So,
Wow.
yeah. Anyway, I'm a total like engineering product nerd. So for me, it became like, how do we have for this group outdoor consumer, which I'm a part of, like how do we make sure we have lenses that fit their activity, that are affordable, that keep all of this waste that was generated from people throwing out frames with just because they have scratch lenses, which by the way is the number one reason people buy new frames is their scratch lenses.
Hmm.
So the second is they lose them, and we're working on fixing that. So something's coming out. It then became, well, how do we really dramatically expand our lens catalog without the inventory carrying costs, right? Because you think about 120,000 products at an MOQ of, even just 100, and all of a sudden you got millions of dollars sitting on the shelf.
Yeah.
And that was where the manufacturing on demand idea came from back in 2018. We tested that. We leased some space from Schwood, the Wood, if you know who they are.
Yeah.
They're a little
Yeah.
eyewear brand here locally, and started manufacturing lenses. So I'm gonna pause for a second. Where do you want me to go from here?
I would love to actually hear, how did you go from, you had everything seemingly dialed in perfectly, right? Where somebody could order something online, it would get made in your factory within 24 hours and shipped out. Like, it almost seems from the outside, and surely that's not the case, but it seems like from the outside you were on easy mode. You had the process worked out, you knew what you needed to do, you could stay ahead of the curve. Why wouldn't you just hold it forever? What would be the motivation that would get you to
Very good
approach selling it?
question. So initially, for me, it's the ego. It was like, I can't just do this. This is not like how I can't spend the rest of my life in easy mode. That's not how I'm wired. It never will be. It's for better or worse, if I don't have a place to channel my energy, like it's chaos sometimes. So, that understanding and owning that, and then realizing like, hey, if I'm going to apply all that I am to what we're doing here, I have to take some big swings because there's way more to do here or in another company, whatever that is, that I want to accomplish personally. And that is my driver. And the vehicle right now is Revant. And in order to take those big swings, we had just come out of COVID. Manufacturing during COVID was a challenge. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
A huge challenge. And we were in Portland, which had its own set of unique issues. As you may or may not know, we are one of the slowest to recover from lockdowns, and crime and other things were absolutely rampant during that time period. And I had to get involved in politics at that point in a heavy, heavy way. So, that was 2021. I was at city council, meeting with the mayor, meeting with a police captain, outside of just running Revant and keeping people like that needed to come in. Like a manufacturing team can't afford to live in the city. We pay a healthy level above minimum wage, but still, it's one of the most expensive places to live in the country. So they have to drive in 20, 30 minutes public transportation into a lockdown city during a pandemic. We have to invest heavily in social distancing requirements across a pretty massive manufacturing footprint and keep product going out the door during a time when demand is absolutely spiking because there's trillions of dollars being pumped into the economy. Outdoor is exploding in a good way. Everyone's now realizing we should get outside more. And I'm like, I'm one hand, this is awesome, we're growing. And the other hand, I'm like, I'm on the line manufacturing lenses, like sometimes 10 hours a day. Like I'm running the company, but people can't come in for, my roommate got COVID. I'm afraid I'm going to die. Like very real concerns, but you can't stop making product when you make your own product.
Yeah.
And so that was really taxing for me. And then 2021, I had my daughter, first kid, right? And it changes you.
Yeah.
So when I went through the process of having my first daughter in the midst of a pandemic, it just codified for me the reason for existence. Like the ego died. It was like I wanted to be the next Oakley. And I wanted out Oakley. I was building factories here. We were making eyewear here in California. And I think in part because they had sued me, right? It woke the dragon.
Yeah.
The other thing, I was just so driven by this idea of everything Jannard got to do, as the founder of Oakley, like the people he got to interact with, the sort of legendary status and all these things. He's the pinnacle of my industry. And so I was like, that's the true north, right? You orient around these people or these ideals. That changed in 2021. It was like a hard pivot for me. And I learned through a series of very difficult steps that, like, if you don't own who you are and know, and then you turn that into action, there's nothing when challenge arises, right? It's like there's a false front, whatever, call it whatever you want. So through that process, I like reoriented around how I define success. I rewrote my values. I rewrote what success is for me personally and how that translated into the what we're building here. And I had to change my leadership style dramatically. And then I rolled that out in phases. You got to change management. You can't scare the team, but this is who I am. I'm going to be vulnerable with you. This is what I care about now. This is how it ladders into what we're building here. And if we're going to take these swings, we need more backing. I'm
Yeah.
committed to being here and doing this, but we need more resources because the forces we're going to be up against and what we're trying to achieve is so big that unless we actually get more, what do I want to say, collaboration, community, capital, all of these things that help you run far, not fast, it's a non-starter. And so I started actually responding to a lot of these companies reaching out about acquisition and did my whole process and landed on a brand actually out of Canada that had a very unique approach to investing. So where do you want to go from here?
What do you do now that you have this big backing? Because I think that's really the big question. First of all, how incredible, like being a parent, absolutely massive impact in so many ways. And I would attribute almost all of my success now to, in some ways, yeah, the need to be successful, like I need to be successful for somebody other than me. And that motivated me. If I wanted to continue doing the things that I loved, I had to make sure that I was the best at it. Otherwise, I was going to have to go do something that was boring and stable. And so you can't just be halfway doing something awesome and also be a parent. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I want to ask you, how do you define success?
I mean, there's so many different ways to come at that one specifically, and I think what it really like my sort of meaning of life. I had this moment actually a long time ago, before our kids were born. I was actually in France, and I was with Kelly McGarry. If you remember our legend, R.I.P. He and I were we were running into this. It's actually a longer story, but we were running into this ocean in at an event. Like the event was over and it was hot, and we like jumped into the water, and like all of our friends ended up being there too, and we were all just like splashing around having a good time, just goofing off. And I just remember like the sun hitting the water just right, and I just had this like awakening of like, this is what it's all about. Surround yourself with the people you love and do awesome stuff. That's it. That and so for me, that was like the awakening of like, this is how I want to live my life, is surround myself with awesome people and do awesome stuff. And that can mean my family in a lot of cases. It can be my friends in a lot of cases. And whatever I have to do to unlock those moments, that's where I'm going to put all of my energy. And anything that's incongruent with that is automatically cut as
I
much as I
love that.
possibly can.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Within reason, right? And
Right.
that, like, dude, that's incredible. I think that's like a lot of people don't have that clarity and they're guided by a number of things that aren't actually in their benefit. Because if you don't define where you want to go or what you care about, you don't know what to say no to.
Yeah.
And that's what became immediately apparent to me too. I'm like, my friend Josue, who's helped us with some of this brand transformation stuff. He runs an agency called Indigena, does a lot of work here around like land back, and he works with a lot of artists. He actually worked with me to get Portugal the Man to play in our parking lot for a fundraiser a few years ago, the old Revant. But he told me, adulthood, the goal of adulthood is to find your inner child and celebrate it. And I was like, dude, that's so naive. Like the ego part of me immediately rejected it. I was like, no, bro, I got spreadsheets. I got crazy materials we're working with here. I don't have time to be a kid. He said, no, 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 no. You are. It's in there. If you give it more breathing room, you'll actually find more energy. And then, you're in your ocean splashing. You're having like in your work. And slowly I began to understand what that means from an integration standpoint of like, if I show up like that, it actually is infectious and gives other people permission, not in an annoying way, but to like bring their version of that to what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that, if you can empower other people to reach that state too, that's when you get the real magic in a business. And so that's really why I ultimately went into like, I need more guidance, I need more mentorship, I need my version of like a board of directors, I need all of these things, and at the end of the day, landed on this is the best path forward for us, and so far it's been fantastic. There's been some bumps in the road, I can tell you that. Like, I've never stayed on after I've sold a company. This is the first time. I've sold two, so I'll say one other example, but the other one was a clean break.
Hmm.
This one wholly integrated, and my job shifted in the way that's more aligned with, again, that idea of like, what's my highest and best purpose here. And they pulled that out of me. The first thing the CEO of our acquiring brand asked me, he flew to Portland and he sat down with me at 10 Barrel over here, and he's like, all right, I got your beer, but before I give it to you, what do you want to be known for? And I was like, ooh, ooh, right, hard hitting right away, man.
Like, let me have that beer and I'll let
Yeah,
you
I was
know.
like now, like when I die, oh god, yeah, exactly. Let's start this conversation after a few. So, just that I immediately knew through the process, like these are my people,
Yeah.
not only from a like values standpoint, but like they've taught me a lot, and there's just a different pace of work and a style and things that mesh well with who I am, and so yeah, it's been good.
That's so cool. So what does the future look like? What are you gearing up for? What can we expect?
Yeah, yeah. So, a lot more lens. Like we have doubled down, I'd say, on lens manufacturing and building that out here. There's a lot going on downstairs that, got new machines we're setting up, new lens technologies. So the next frontier for us, I think of it, Revant, we deal in plastic, right? So
Hmm.
again, in the interest of transparency, the eyewear industry largely deals in plastic. Plastic is a huge issue in the outdoor, like
Yeah.
for nature. It's just for us, like we're eating a credit card of plastic a month, I think was the stat that I last read. It's crazy.
That's
And
out of
so,
control.
yeah, well, and even like plastic water bottles, like they just came out with a study that's like, oh, it's like, again, look up the actual, but it's something in the nature of like 20 times more plastic is leaching into your water than we initially thought. So like it's everywhere. It's almost you can't extricate it from current ways of like thinking and product and all of that. So my big picture is facilitating the transition to more renewable materials. Like I think, it's like how do I do that in the context of what we are here? Uh, well, that's what we're doing. So, for us, I always was like, it's kind of a layup. Like, oh yeah, we're more sustained, we're more harmonious, we're working on conservation. Choose whatever term you want that makes you feel okay about the term, which is another art. Conservation, I'll use that one. Like, in order to live in a way that conserves the environments that we all love to play in when we talk about the outdoor industry, the places where we recharge, we compete, we connect, all of these things that we all know because it's our secret weapon in a way. Uh, why are we not leading the charge to conserve those environments? Why are we not picking up the mantle in a very, very real way and saying this is ours to own and drive forward? And that is what is driving me from the core right now, in part because I don't want my daughter to be in a sea of plastic.
Yeah.
Like we just passed the era, like the way they measure like what happened in different like time spans as they archaeological digs, is they look at what's in that layer. Our layer is plastic now. Like we just passed that. We are the plastic layer. So when like future generations go digging, they're going to find a layer of plastic as the remaining like and by far the most material in our layer. So now how do we make that layer not as deep?
Hmm.
We have to transition into materials that perform just as well, if not better, but are not as damaging and lasting as what we're currently using. So that's my driver. We repair, back to like the lazy part for me. I was like, oh, we repair, which is, keep product in market longer. When you think about sustainability, that's the most sustainable way.
Yeah.
Do you want people using products as long as possible? Design them for longevity, design them for repair. Sustainability starts with design. It's one of our ethos here. So, and being able to customize it. So as your eyes age, as you go into different sports or activities or you go on vacation, you should be able to customize your eyewear as a system for that environment, your age, as your eyes degrade. So that's what we're working on right now, is a holistic vision brand where we're going to use no new plastic in the next 5 years.
That's
That's
incredible.
that's my BHAG, right? It's like let's go, because it's already in other industries. And that's the funny thing, is as you are able to elevate and pull out your inner child of like, how could we do this? What's happening? Just be curious, right? All of a sudden, all these brands I'm putting this out there, and small ways, but through my network. And now we're connected to a brand that's been in the automotive industry largely for the last 70 years. And they're making plastic, comparable plastic to what's used in eyewear, which is a TR90 nylon in the frame. It's a fossil fuel based plastic. This brand Arkema is making a plastic, and I brought props because I like props, out of castor beans. Let's see.
Oh,
So,
wild.
and then they press these things into oil, and then that oil gets pressed into pellets. And this is exactly, if you were to go into an eyewear factory, you'd see this going into an extruding machine, which is molding essentially frames.
Yeah.
All you have to do, it's a slightly different mold. You have to use this, which from a property standpoint is actually more heat resistant,
Huh.
is fits, feels great. Use this instead of fossil fuel plastic. And right there, you're using, these things are sustainably harvested in India. We have like certified, like people going in and saying this is actually removing carbon from our atmosphere, and it does not disrupt any existing food chain because it's grown largely in like desert climate. So like this is out there, and I think what I want to get out to your community is like it's the connective tissue that's missing, the shared understanding across automotive and like all of these other industries that have either for one reason or another are forced to use more sustainable material that we need to apply to our industry.
That's so cool. Wow.
It's fun. I mean, talk about, I said, all right, what do you want to be known for? I want to be known for this, the guy that catalyzed this movement, the guy that said enough. Like in the outdoor industry, in the eyewear industry, pick your product. Like I should not be getting a Coleman like camp stove covered in styrofoam anymore. To me, that is like, we should make laws against that.
Yeah.
Like we should, as an outdoor industry, maybe we need to create bylaws of if you want to be a brand here, I I don't know. I'm going to throw this out there because I think it is like it is so urgent and it's pressing and we all need to be talking about it and sharing knowledge.
Wow.
So
I love it, man. I'm all about it. No, this is incredible. And I did not expect that at all, but I'm so yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
our
My daughter's, this is the other thing I'll say here because I always like to drive it back to what I can show you here is we're working on prototypes. So obviously we got some frames, but my daughter's birthday is molded into all of these in a very subtle way. So every product in the vision category, when I talk about the big picture,
Mhm.
it's no new plastic. It's also a closed loop system. So we can take everything back, provide a store credit, and we'll either refurbish because we have the capability to do that here with the lens manufacturing,
Yeah.
and we'll resell kind of like Peak Design and their resale market, or we can grind it down and make new products. Like we have that capability now. And so if you can not only address the front end, the design to keep these frames on people's faces or goggles or whatever the product will end up being for as long as possible, and you enable the hardware side of that with product, then you offer, hey, when you're done with this, send it back to us. We'll give you a prepaid label. I gotta show you this too. There's one more product. It's called Photo. So this might be my product or part of the like brand,
Yeah, this is
product marketing.
our BPC.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this thing is made of recycled materials, 100%.
I love how it
Uh,
says this camera is trash on
yeah,
the
dude.
front.
And look at all this, like right on. I don't know if it's backwards, but
All good.
for you, it's good. So I bought one of these. It's got a red dot, whatever. The design is awesome. It's just a disposable camera, but it's a reimagining of it.
Yeah.
And it looks cool. It's made of sustainable materials. You have a QR code, and then they provide you with a ship back. So when you finish the photos, ship it back. They print them. They send you the photos. They'll send you a new camera. And you're like, okay, that's what I'm talking about. So I
Yeah.
reached out to the CEO. They're going to be at our launch event this June because we want to form like coalitions. Let's borrow from my political experience. This is the calling of the outdoor industry, in my opinion. Save the outdoors. I know there's a lot going on. Sort of, we have bits and pieces, I'd say, but I'm saying right now, like we need to rally and we need
Yeah.
to highlight brands that are actually driving more sustainable products and services forward. And we need to share materials. We need to scale so we get economies of scale. And we need to rally to make better product using sustainable material, which we can. Like it's very possible. I have now made multiple vision products without getting into too much detail that outperform anything on the market, and they're going to be more affordable than most brands, and they come with everything I just described. So
I mean, you're leading a revolution in the outdoor industry in my mind, you know?
I hope
And
so. I don't need to lead it. I just need to spark it. I just
yeah.
need to spark it. That for me, it's like right now there's so much noise in just let's zoom out. Like noise is everywhere, right? You can cut through it with moments of like brief moments, but we all know content dies immediately almost. What I'm trying to spark is like we can all take meaningful action because a lot of people are paralyzed right now just by finding more sustainable products to buy or supporting brands or maybe sharing materials knowledge like I will. Arkema, Rilzan. If you make a plastic product, look up Arkema Rilzan. On just made a recyclable shoe with them. Like it's a great product, amazing company, and you can source immediately from Arkema. And I don't care if you're an eyewear brand, by the way, do it. Because to
Yeah.
me, that's success. The more back to like, how do I define it? If we facilitate or catalyze the transition to more renewable, sustainable, conservation oriented, again, the politicization of these terms are very, very delicate. But I will say all of us across hunting, biking, fishing, running can say we want to conserve the outdoors. And we need to do that now. We cannot wait. And so if your brand is not orienting in that direction, one, you're not thinking about consumers that are coming up because they care big time. And you will be obsolete within 10 years, I guarantee it. you can come after me. I'll help you. Like, I'm so sure about this, like that if from a strategic longevity business health standpoint, if you are not at least dabbling in more sustainable materials, you are going to lose. So that's my rally cry. The rally cry is actually the positive. If you do, when you do, and when we start sharing ideas and resources, we are going to lead a very important charge that is leaderless right now, and in fact is being attacked.
Yeah.
It's outdoors and conservation. That's it. We need to lead.
That feels like the perfect conclusion to this podcast. That I'm gonna put this stuff in the show notes, and yeah, what a rallying cry for everyone that's really trying to make it happen in the outdoor industry. There's so many business owners, founders that listen to this podcast that I think are going to be smashing the link on the Archimist
I
stuff
hope
to
so.
figure
I
it
hope
out.
so. And I'm open to like any conversation, knowledge sharing, like to me this is like why my reason,
Yeah,
my reason for being. So and it's hard. I will acknowledge that too. Like sustainability is not cheap. It's not easy. And because it is like a new frontier for a lot of people and a lot of brands early on, you can't afford to do that. That's why it's even more important that we share knowledge and materials so that you kind of remove that obstacle of like some of these materials are more expensive. So if I'm going to sell a $50 product versus 80, consumers are still buying the more affordable one, especially right now. So that's where we can share knowledge and hopefully get some economies of scale going.
very cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the pod today,
Thanks for
and
having me, dude.
yeah, thanks for
Hey,
celebrating our 1 year.
congrats again. I'm gonna go smash this. It looks pretty good. So and man, keep it up. You guys are killing it. Please pass along to your team. Like, thank you for doing this and for spreading the good word and putting people on your platform that care and care about community and empathy and all these things that are critically important right now. Like, you guys are doing good work. So thank you.
Thank you. Onwards
Yeah,
and upwards.
exactly.